Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the previous speakers. You have heard important statements, and I will not repeat what was said. I would like only to add the following. Number one, as the Russian ambassador has just said, the chapter is being closed. We have entered the third phase in implementing the United Nations as well as OPCW plan in full cooperation and agreement with the Syrian government to get rid of the chemical weapons. So we are, practically speaking, approaching the end of the game. Number two, Dr. Sellstrom and many ambassadors acknowledged the Syrian government's cooperation with regard the course of conducting the business by Dr. Sellstrom and his team. The Syrian government is still assessing the report. We have provided some elementary remarks on Friday, and I will be now at your disposal for any additional remarks, any additional information. You may be aware that many international crises since the inception of the United Nations were instigated and triggered by lies. We may remember what happened in the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam, the Iraqi file, 2003, etc., etc., etc. It's really unfortunate that somebody in this United Nations is still focused on setting up traps and lies in order to justify unilateral aggression against this member state or that member state. As far as we are concerned, the issue of the chemical weapons in Syria is being closed, as I said, and now the chemical, biological, and nuclear Israeli arsenal should be open and pursued very closely so that we will establish this very important goal of having a zone in the Middle East free from all weapons of mass destruction. This is what the focus should be from now on, and I take this opportunity to share with you very alarming information with regard the crimes perpetrated by the Jabhat al-Nusra and the Islamic Front, or Army, Islamic Army, as the Saudis call it, because they are the ones who set it up in Adra, in the city of Adra, on the way between Damascus and Homs. These mercenaries, shipped into Syria by the Saudi intelligence and the Qatari money and intelligence with Turkish logistics, are perpetrating massive crimes in the city of Adra against civilians. They have massacred so far hundreds of its inhabitants. The army, of course, is there, but the terrorist groups are using the civilians as human shields. This is why the army cannot undertake and proceed with a large-scale military operation, otherwise the lives of the civilians might be affected. I will forward in a few minutes from now 2 identical letters to the Secretary General and the President of the Security Council, ask them to shoulder the responsibilities in making serious pressure on the Saudi, Turkish, and Qatari regimes so that they would stop financing, facilitating, harboring, sponsoring these terrorist groups operating in Syria in a very barbarian and savage ways that should be condemned by everybody. I am in your hands.
Nasser, the fact that the report says that government soldiers are victims proof in your mind that the rebels were behind several of the attacks, Al-Jaafari and one other place? And also, I want to ask you, the United States says it's impossible for the rebels to have killed their own people to stage this provocation. But the fact that most of these are foreign mercenaries that are coming to fight, they're not killing their own people. They could be killing Syrians. Does that figure in your estimation of what happened?
You may remember that a few months ago, when the issue of the chemical weapons started, surfacing the events at the United Nations discussions, the Syrian government, 18 hours after what happened in Khan al-Assal, asked the Secretary General to provide assistance to the Syrian government in order to investigate what happened in Khan al-Assal. At the same time, immediately, the French and the British delegations jumped on and said that there are other allegations on the use of chemical weapons in Syria. So they started providing the Secretariat with further allegations, additional incremental allegations with regard to the so-called use of chemical weapons in Syria. This ball of snow increased until the Secretariat reached the figure of 47 allegations. 47 allegations coming from here and there. Of course, all of them came from the French, British, American, Turkish, Qatari, and Saudi governments. Dr. Sellström, after 9 months of investigation, found out, or less, but the issue started on March, he found out that out of these 47 allegations, he decided to investigate only 17. Out of these 17, he found that only 5 were credible. You see the difference? Do you see the size of misleading that was played off by some member states? Some of them are in charge of maintaining peace and security in this organization. So when we know that, we would immediately jump up to the conclusion that somebody was misleading the Council and was misleading Dr. Sellström and his team. Finally, out of these 5 cases investigated by Dr. Sellström, he found that in 3 cases, Syrian soldiers were victims of inhaling sarin or poisonous gas. That confirms what we said from the beginning. If you were there when I started talking about this issue, we said it from the beginning. We said that somebody used this sarin gas, and we provided all the information we had at that time, including the 2-liter sarin gas which was brought from Libya by the terrorists inside Turkey, and from Turkey they were arrested later on by the Turkish intelligence. But of course, that was only one case. We may imagine that many other cases happened before or after where the smugglers succeeded in shipping this dangerous material into Syria and used it. This is what we said from the beginning. But the important part of the story is that somebody in this international organization tried to help triggering an aggression, military aggression against Syria by issuing a partial report, if you remember. Before finalizing the investigation, somebody was helping triggering a military aggression against Syria under the false allegation that the Syrian government used chemical weapons. And now, after 3 months of this incident, Dr. Sellström himself came to the Council, briefed the Council, and said that somehow the Syrian government was victim.
Do you think Prince Bandar was behind the 21 attack?
Of course. I would refer you to the article of Seymour Hirsch, the reportage done by CNN, The Independent, the British newspapers. I mean, it's no secret anymore. Everybody is speaking about the role of the Saudi intelligence into this extremely dangerous game that is taking place inside Syria. I'm not only referring to the chemical issue. The Saudis are involved in establishing, in sponsoring all kinds of terrorist groups in Syria, including Jabhat al-Nusra, which is, as you know, enlisted on the list of the Security Council of entities and individuals sponsoring terrorism. So somebody should make serious pressure on the Saudi regime and hold it responsible for these horrible and horrendous crimes perpetrated against the Syrian people. I need you to focus on what's going on right now in Adra, in the city of Adra. It's a workers' city. All workers there. There is no army. There is nothing over there that would justify, such horrible crimes against the civilians. They are gathering the civilians in the basements of each building, so that if the army starts attacking the city, the civilians would be the first victims. Besides, they are slaughtering people on a sectarian and confessional basis. I wouldn't go into details. This is horrible what's going over there. But, you should hold responsible those who are sponsoring these terrorists also. There are governments, regimes, members of this organization who are sponsoring these terrorists publicly.
Ambassador, could you
ماذا تتوقعون من الأمم المتحدة أن تفعله ولم تفعله في التحقيق الكيميائي؟ أيضا ماذا تتوقعون من نتائج الرسائل التي سترسلونها بشأن عذرا أن تفعل؟
نحن لا نتوقع المعجزات من الأمم المتحدة لأننا سبق وأرسلنا المئات من الرسائل الموثقة لكل من الأمين العام ومجلس الأمن. أنت تعرف أن مجلس الأمن يعمل وفق آليات معينة. هناك دول دائمة العضوية تساعد الإرهاب في سوريا، ترعى الإرهاب في سوريا، تغطي على جرائم الإرهابية في سوريا. هذه مشكلة، يوجد مشكلة في أداء مجلس الأمن، خاصة في طريقة تفاعل اللجان الفرعية لمكافحة الإرهاب مع الإرهاب الجاري في سوريا. على كل حال نحن كدولة عضو في هذه المنظمة الدولية نشاطر مشاغلنا وقلقنا البالغ مع المنظمة الدولية، ونطلب من الجميع أن يتحملوا مسؤولياتهم، لأن عدم التعامل الجاد مع ما يجري في سوريا من إرهاب ممول من حكومات معروفة الآن، أضحت معروفة، تركيا وقطر والسعودية، سيؤدي إلى انتشار الإرهاب أكثر في العالم، سيؤدي إلى انفجار في المنطقة، يصعب السيطرة عليه فيما بعد، وهذا الإرهاب سيصيب تلك الأنظمة التي تمول الآن. يعني لا يمكن لمن يلعب أو يخرج المارد من القمقم أن يعيده إلى القمقم. من يلعب بالنار ستطاله النار حكما.
Ambassador, should there be a cessation of violence before Geneva II can convene?
You may remember that the first point of Kofi Annan's plan was putting an end to violence. And the first item of Al-Ibrahimi plan is putting an end to violence. And the first item of Geneva II is putting an end to violence. You cannot start talking about peace plan for Syria unless you put an end to the violence and to the terror. So the Syrian government is deeply and sincerely involved in calling for putting an end to the violence. Of course, the day before we start Geneva II talks, even before, why not?
About UNDOF. Two questions about UNDOF. One is, there have been these attacks on the Irish contingent. No one wanted to say whether it came from the government or from the armed opposition. And also an Israeli minister has said that they are delivering aid to Syria somehow mediated by UNDOF. I wanted to know if you'd seen that comment and whether you've asked DPKO, what do you think of this, of UNDOF's role currently?
The spokesperson of the Secretary General made a big mistake a couple of weeks ago when he briefed you, the journalists, about this incident. He gave an insinuation that the Syrian side fired on the Irish soldiers. Finally, the head of UNDOF himself made a statement denying that and saying that that was just a media source of information in Ireland, and that it was never issued by the commandment of the UNDOF. Later on, the Syrian government clarified the issue to the DPKO as well as to the Secretary General, and we will send a special letter to the spokesperson himself, maybe today, drawing his kind attention to the fact that he should correct his mistake while briefing the journalists about serious incidents that take place here or there. So finally, nowadays, today, while I am talking to you, we all know, based on information emanating from the UNDOF commandment, that the Syrian army did not fire on the Irish soldiers. On the contrary, the Syrian army informed the head of UNDOF that the soldiers of UNDOF who were there, the Irish soldiers, should change their road and proceed in another direction so that they could avoid shelling by the armed groups and the Israeli side that was taking place at that time. So once again, the spokesperson was wrong when he briefed you about what happened on the separation line with regard to the incident that affected the Irish soldiers. We are glad that nobody was hurt. We are glad that finally the Irish soldiers changed their road and their direction so that they avoided any casualties among them. Thank you so much.
Two questions. One, there have been several references to Seymour Hersh's article. When and where did that
Which article?
Seymour Hersh. When and where did that?
3 days ago.
Oh, it was. Where?
It has become public now. It's famous. I mean, it's an
where was
article.
in the New York Times?
No. No.
The New Yorker? No.
Seymour Hersh. I forgot where, but review books. Yeah. The review books.
One more question. Since
3 days ago, 4 days ago.
before the Geneva II talks can begin, there has to be a cessation of violence. But since obviously those who are arming the rebels are doing so with impunity and evidently have no intention of stopping, how can there be a cessation of violence in order for Geneva to...
This is the $1 million question. I mean, this is a question that should be addressed to these influential countries in the Council who are protecting the Saudis and the Turks and the Turkish and the Qatari government regimes. They are the ones who should be responsible for that. It's not justifiable that somebody is protecting the Turkish regime just because Turkey is member of the NATO. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that somebody is protecting the Saudis, while today even another article is speaking about the role of the Saudis in 9/11 incidents. There are many scandals in these international organizations. There are many scandals in this Security Council. We cannot control everything. We cannot monitor everything. This is a very serious matter. It's up to these big guys in this Security Council to act responsibly, finally, so that they would help the Syrian government stopping the violence by making serious pressure on the Saudi, Turkish, and Qatari regime to enable everybody to stop the bloodshed in Syria.
I'd like to just ask one question here regarding recent reports that the Obama administration has decided to cut off even non-lethal aid to opposition forces based on the seizure of such non-lethal aid by some of the jihadist opposition. That, coupled with evidence of Syria's cooperation in connection with the destruction of chemical weapons, which the Obama administration itself has conceded, do you see any grounds or hope for some shift in terms of the Obama administration's position vis-a-vis Syria, perhaps taking a more skeptical view of the motives of the opposition?
We hope so. We hope so. I don't know what is the political or military definition of the word non-lethal weapons, while Mr. Kerry himself acknowledged that these terrorist groups have confiscated depots, military depots provided by the military, by the American government to these terrorist groups. I don't know what is the meaning of non-lethal weapons, while everybody is acknowledging that these terrorist groups put their hands on military depots full with American material. This is number one. Number two, it's really, we were encouraged a little bit when we heard that the American administration decided to stop providing the so-called non-lethal weapons to the armed and terrorist groups in Syria. But you know what? We all know that the so-called Islamic Front, or the Islamic Army, as the Saudis call it, is out of 7 Islamic militias. All of them were set up and sponsored by the Saudis, by the Saudi intelligence. So I don't see the validity in the American position to provide assistance to people affiliated with Al-Qaeda. These people are affiliated with Jabhat al-Nusra, which is enlisted on the Security Council list of entities and individuals sponsoring terrorism. So somehow somebody is misleading the American administration with regard dealing with these terrorist groups. Third point is that you cannot be an arsonist and a fireman at the same time. USA is a full partner with the Russian Federation in preparing the ground for Geneva II talks. So either you prepare the ground, appropriately for going to Geneva talks on a solid ground, or you disassociate yourself from this issue and say, guys, I cannot be responsible for solving the Syrian crisis peacefully. I'm going to help the terrorists. You cannot do both. We need the US to be involved, deeply involved, positively involved in preparing the ground for a real peace talks, peaceful peace talks in Geneva II. There is contradiction in the American position. This is why many people are getting confused. Nobody has any answer, clear-cut answer to the American strategy towards the Syrian crisis. We deeply, sincerely, honestly wish to see the American administration changing the cap of its strategy. But so far, I heard Mr. Kerry again repeating that the American administration will resume its military assistance, its non-lethal, whatever they call it, to the terrorists.
You said from the beginning that the chapter